Good afternoon, everyone. We're going to wait just a few minutes to try to get to give people an opportunity to arrive. So you give people maybe 5 more minutes. So we're going to get started. Welcome, everyone, to our fourth quarter 2023 Governor's Workforce Council meeting. I'd like to welcome our council members, as well as our many community, government, and business partners for today's meeting. And I just want to remind everyone that in terms of the meeting participation, feel free to use the chat throughout. And, if you want to ask a question during one of our panels, you can also use the raise hand option. We have a great lineup today, including we're going to be hearing at the top of the meeting from Governor Lamont. We'll also be hearing today from Workforce Commissioner Kelly Vallries on aligning skills and jobs. And she's going to feature a spotlight on the IT workforce and hear from some leaders who have been expanding education and employment opportunities in information technology. We have 2 panels today that are both focused on addressing our workforce needs and labor shortages in the state, with 2 key populations that are underrepresented in our workforce: women and people with disabilities. Both of these populations could help close our labor shortage and greatly increase economic growth for our state. In fact, I've heard some of our manufacturing CEOs say that if we could only partially close the gender gap in manufacturing employment, we would more than fill all the open jobs in manufacturing. Many CEOs see childcare as the biggest barrier to making this happen. So the first panel today will feature leaders from the governor's Blue Ribbon panel on childcare. The second panel will include leaders involved, both state agencies and others, who are working to support people with disabilities in honor of National Disability Employment Awareness Month. After these panel discussions, we will have time for breakout discussions in the 4 o'clock hour on 3 topics: career pathways, childcare, and people with disabilities. So I am kind of managing time here because around kind of when the governor is going to be kind of showing up. I assume, Kelly, the governor's not here yet, right?
He's right here, Mark.
Oh. Governor Lamont, thank you for being here with us and taking time out of your busy schedule. Really excited to have you. So let's turn directly now to hear from Governor Lamont.
Thanks, Mark. I'm sorry, I'm just on a phone. I'm on my way to Stamford. When it comes to workforce, you mentioned some of our initiatives. Another one is housing. Everywhere I go, employers say, even if I have the workforce, do we also have a place for people to live? And some of our towns are a little shy about telling us where they want the housing to go. So that's what we're doing in Stamford today. I want to say, first of all, Mark, to you and Kelly and the team, moving in the year 4, and we need you more than ever. You saw the jobs report coming out today. Connecticut has more private sector people working today than ever before in our history. And we still have a significant labor shortages, you just referred. That's everything from that's teachers and nurses and IT skills and cybersecurity and lasers, and we're trying to do everything we can, thanks to each and every one of you, to bridge that gap and make sure that we have the people with the skills necessary to fill these jobs. And it's also an opportunity to lift people up. First time in my life that we can feel folks who maybe say, this is not a job for somebody like me. Nobody in my family's ever had a job like this. Yes, it is now. And those are some of the initiatives that, thanks to you, we're getting into place. It starts early. We have one of the great K-12 systems in the country, and we've got a pretty extensive internship program now, so young people can see what manufacturing is like in an early age as an intern. And then over at the Department of Labor, we've got an apprenticeship program, which is significant. We pay for it. So I tell all the employers there, take advantage of that. With Dante Bartolomeo, we provide funding, so some of these juniors and seniors in college can get exposure to what your amazing business is. And we get the best and the brightest that come from all over the world that come to our colleges. We want to keep them here. That's another way we can help make sure we have the workforce you need and get them working for you. Before they think about moving out to Silicon Valley or something, keep them here. What we're trying to do. I love what your panels are on today. Beth Bai is really taking the lead on daycare, and she's got the special task force. I hope you'll have a chance to hear what some of their conclusions are. We're doing everything we can to continue to expand daycare access for everybody. Just from an education point of view, every teacher that I talk to says, I can tell a kid coming into a kindergarten who's coming out of a good quality daycare program before. And secondly, what it means in terms of getting more of our single parents, single moms into the workforce. We need them. That's another way we can expand our workforce and make that difference. I'd love to hear your perspective as I listen in. We have some incentives out there in terms of businesses to expand daycare. A 50% subsidy in terms of you establishing a facility on site or working with somebody like Bright Horizons to do so, a 50% subsidy for operating expenses for your employees taking advantage of daycare. It seemed like a good idea to me, but not many people are taking advantage of it. So, like nobody. So, I'd love to hear your point of view if it's too complicated or not really where you want to be. You know, speaking of that, you know, later on, we also have a pretty significant tax credit for companies that hire a student from a Connecticut college. They maybe graduate with you know, $30,000 in debt. We give you a tax credit, 50% tax credit if you offer to start paying down their debt. Is one more incentive to for Connecticut college graduates to stay in Connecticut, and another incentive for you to hire Connecticut graduates. Again, maybe it's a program that's a little too specific or narrow, but not many people are taking advantage of it. I'd love to hear why. Kelly, as you know, is really working with Terrence Chang to reform community colleges. What we're trying to do to get not necessarily a 2-year degree, but maybe it's a 24-week certificate program in a skill that you need. And you're helping us create the programs at our community colleges to be able to do that. And we're doing the same thing with labor. We've got the you know, technical institutes, so folks in plumbing and electrician and others helping to get more people with those skills. We've got you know, billions of dollars of new infrastructure money to speed up transportation, but I got to make sure we've got the skills we need to be able to build those programs. And finally, Mark, I'm really touched by this being National Disability Employment Awareness Month and the good work of our employers to give everybody that chance. And these are great workers, and they need the opportunity. And you will find it's a decision you never regret. I was at Park, which is the center helping folks out with disabilities in Hartford just a year or so ago, and I was there the day that they got their paychecks. When they were working in grocery stores or other service places where they're able to provide a little bit of support. But not only you help in the store, but what it means in terms of dignity and pride and value for each and every one of the folks. And I was there to watch them with a big grin on their face get that their first paycheck. So I'll just say we're in a good place right now as a state, I believe. It's a really complicated world. It's a mess down there in the House of Representatives. We got wars raging in the Middle East and Ukraine. A lot of risk out there. But for now, I think the American economy is the envy of the world, and certainly the Connecticut economy is as strong as it's ever been. The only way we can keep it growing with opportunity for everybody is thanks to you. And thanks to the Workforce Council, and thanks to the ways that we can make sure that we provide the workforce you need. That's a role I think government can really be a strong partner, but we can't do it without the private sector in partnership to make sure you have the people you need to help your company grow and expand. And that means helping companies grow, and that means opportunity for more people. With that, let me sit back and listen a little bit, Mark, but thanks for including me.
Governor, thank you so much for taking the time. We're really grateful for your leadership across the state on economic growth, on workforce development, and really kind of, you know, creating, expanding opportunities for people from all walks of life. So thank you so much, Governor, for all of your leadership. Next, we need to do a couple of housekeeping items before we hear from Kelly. And get into some of the skills issues and IT and such. We have 2 items to vote on: approval of the July 20th minutes and approval of our meeting dates for 2024, which you'll see kind of on the screen here. So if you vote yes on both, you can just say yes for all when I call your name. Also, when you vote, please indicate kind of your preferred options for what time of day you'd like these meetings to be. We've gotten some feedback that this doesn't work for everybody, so We're interested in your preference in early morning, mid-morning, or late afternoon. And we may also shorten the length of the meeting from 3 to 2 hours. Which may also keep it scheduled. So I'm going to now go to the call vote and ask each person to vote on the minutes and approval of the meeting dates. Alexandra Dahm or Paul Robertson from DECD.
Mark, I'm sorry. I think we need a motion and a second from someone on the Governor's Workforce Council.
Thank you.
You're welcome. If someone on the Governor's Workforce Council would like to make a motion to vote on the 2 items,
Moved.
please state your name for the record and please.
John Murphy.
John Murphy motions first. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sally.
Thank you. So let me kind of continue on the roll call now. Amy Porter.
Good afternoon. Yes to both and no preference for meeting time, whatever works best.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner. Anthony Medici.
Good afternoon. Yes to both. I prefer option 3.
Great. Brian Doubles or George Anderson.
Hey, Mark, George Anderson here. Yes to both. And option 3 sounds good.
Thank you. Commissioner Russell Tucker or Keith Norton.
I'm here. Nice to see everyone. Yes to both and option 3.
Thank you, Commissioner. I know Christy Pentima could not be here. Is Mark Soicher here? Chris O'Connor or Kyle Ballou?
Yes, Kyle, and yes to both and no preference for time.
Thank you, Kyle. Mike Pruding for Cindy Bigelow.
Yes, I'm here. Yes to both and option 3.
Thank you, Mike. Commissioner Bartolomeo or Mark Pizzella.
Hi, Mark. It's Mark Bolzella. I would say yes to both and option 3.
Thank you, Mark. Ed Hawthorne. Erica Smith.
Yes to both and no opinion on the 3 options.
Thank you. Governor, it's rare to have you on this, but you're, as a commission member, allowed to vote also. I don't know if you wish to. Jay Williams. Jeff Walker.
Hey, Mark, yes to both at option 3, please.
Thank you, Jeff. Is anybody here from Hartford Healthcare? Because I know Jeffrey Flax could not be here. Dr. John Murphy.
Yes to both and option number 3, please.
Thank you, Dr. Murphy. Joseph Gianni or Bill Tommins.
Mark, it's Joe Gianni. Yes to both and no preference.
Thank you, Joe. Judy Olean or Bethany Zempa. Kathy Szilard.
Yes to both and option 3, please.
Thank you, Kathy. Kelly Valeries.
Yes to both.
Okay. Carrie Hona. Dr. Leslie Torres Rodriguez. Letitia Cohen de Mejas or Lillian Bro.
Yes to both. This is Lillian Brough on behalf of Leticia. Yes to both and option 2, please.
Thank you. Maggie Hulse or Jack Mahoney. I'm voting yes on both. And no option, no preference. Marty Guay,
Yes to both, Mark, and no preference.
okay. Michelle James,
Yes to both and option 3.
thank you, Michelle. Molly Kellogg, Dr. Minette Ferguson,
Good afternoon. Yes to both and option 3 is my preference.
thank you, Dr. Ferguson. Neil O'Leary, Paul Costello, Peter Nystrom, Peter Salve or Richard Jacob, Radinka Merrick or Gladys Kersaint,
Gladys Kersaint, yes to both and option 3, please.
thank you. Ray Penault,
Good afternoon. Yes to both and no preference.
thank you, Ray. Rohan Freeman, couldn't hear you, Rohan. Sal Menzo, Dr. Sal Menzo,
Yes to both and option 3.
thank you, Dr. Menzo. Shane Eddy or Peter Howland, Sharon Barr, Sean Coyne,
Yes to both and option 2.
thank you. Shelley Davis,
Good afternoon, Mark. Yes to both and option 3.
thank you, Shelley. Steve Sullivan or Jonathan Harris,
Steve is here, Mark. Yes to both and no time preference.
thank you, Steve. Suresh Malthaswamy, Terrence Chang or Rai Kathuria,
This is Rai Kathuria on behalf of Chancellor Cheng. Yes to both and option 3, please.
thank you, Rai. Tiana Ocasio, Representative Tony Walker, Tawanda Talley Rushing, and Wes Alexander. Okay. Thank you very much. Now I have the pleasure of introducing Kelly Valeries, our Chief Workforce Officer, to provide the Office of Workforce Strategy report. Kelly?
Great, thank you, everyone. We are, Laura, you can go back to the other slide if you want. We are working to reconstitute some of our committees. As you know, we have talked about some of the additional structures to the workforce strategy. So we're going to be engaging all of you very deeply in the iterations of those upcoming revisions to the strategy. So we want to thank you very much for that, and more information will be coming out. And next, I'd like to share with you some really great news about our Good Jobs Challenge. I see that Frank Avery is on our call today. I want to acknowledge Frank in all of his support and help from the EDA on helping us get the Good Jobs Challenge grant off of the ground. We now have contracts executed with all of our awardees, and training programs have begun. Prior to the execution of the contracts, I want to acknowledge all of the fantastic work that is happening around the regional sector partnerships. We had an amazing event in the Southwest, Data Dependent and Tech-Able Partnership. Governor Lamont and other dignitaries were able to attend and participate in that. And this past week, I've had the privilege to attend 2 additional regional sector partnership meetings. One at the Eastern Connecticut Healthcare Partnership, who's doing amazing work on the mental health shortage in Eastern Connecticut. We highlighted that program in our July or August meeting. And then I also met with the New Haven Bioscience Collaborative at an event just last night or the night before last. And, you know, just out of all of the amazing work that they're doing, I want to continue to highlight the internship program where they brought in over 170 students across Connecticut and from outside of Connecticut to work in the very many vibrant bioscience businesses in the New Haven region. So we're just very excited to continue to see the strength that comes out of the work that is business led. And that is really the strength of all of you on this call today. So more to come on that. We will be hosting a in-person regional sector partnership convening on January 11th. Being hosted by Central State University. So I want to thank President Toro and her team. And we will be in their brand new innovation center. So very exciting. Please mark that on your calendar. More to come. Next, I'd like to talk a little bit about that skills gap that we have and the work that we're doing to address it. As Governor Lamont mentioned, Connecticut is at the highest employment rate that we have ever had. We have recovered more private sector jobs than we had prior to the pandemic. So we're considered at full employment across the state with our unemployment rate at just under 3.5%. And so what does that mean for all of us? It's really the imperative that we can't take our workforce for granted and that there's going to be someone to fill a role that someone may have left or that is opening, and that in the traditional ways in which we would put out a job posting and get a bunch of applications and go through and pick the best candidate. We really need to focus on ensuring that we are reaching candidates who are very valuable and for many reasons may not have fully participated in education and workforce systems in the past. So we'll talk a bit about that, but you'll see here that historically we have approximately 64 to 65,000 open jobs across the state. That is kind of our normal pre-pandemic level, and that takes into account for job growth and job changers and people who are retiring. So there's always that churn, but that delta is really the expansion of Connecticut's economy and the growth of the demand of jobs within our state, which is very exciting problem to have, although it's still a problem we're working hard to address. Healthcare remains our #1 industry that has the most open jobs. The majority of these jobs are patient-facing jobs, so very vital that we continue to address this. We've done some great work in healthcare with the Healthcare Horizons program that is expanding mental health and nursing programs across our state. And we actually have 2 newer programs that are going to be coming online soon. One is Northwestern State University is going to be adding an accelerated RN program. And the CT State system is working very hard to launch LPN programs across the state. So a lot of work happening there, a lot of great focus groups to understand how we build those stackable credentials happening there. We all are very familiar with the manufacturing job openings, amazing programs happening across the state to support that. And we're really digging into the educational openings and working closely with the great work that Commissioner Russell Tucker is doing at the State Department of Education. So all of these are just opportunities for our Connecticut residents and to attract residents from other parts of the country to come to Connecticut and fill these amazing jobs. So next slide, please. So that's the demand side, but the job seekers side. So we have a lot of demand by our job seekers to fill these. And, we look across the system of how our job seekers are being served in 2023. Approximately 70,000 job seekers have been served by multiple levels of service through our American Job Centers and our workforce boards, through DOL, through the community college, CT State system, and all of our amazing higher ed partners across the state. Our workforce boards, in partnership with our community colleges and other providers, have trained over 8,000 people this year. Our community colleges have provided 3,500 credit certificates, with approximately 6,000 people participating at any given time in non-credit programs. A lot of those programs are being supported by Career Connect and the $70 million investment by Governor Lamont in the General Assembly, and all of the great work happening at the Department of Labor, with approximately 6,400 active apprentices, with almost half of them under the age of 25. So all of the systems are really working to enhance the output of our skilled workforce. But we definitely have some barriers to entry. We have a skills mismatch. A lot of the jobs that were lost during the pandemic are those higher level jobs and some of the mid-level jobs. But we are at almost full employment in those categories. So we need to look at students that are coming out of school and those who have not historically participated in a meaningful way in career ladders within Connecticut. So we're working diligently between the Good Jobs Challenge, Career Connect, the great work that CT State is doing, our other academic partners, to address this. We'll talk more about it in our breakout session if you're interested later this afternoon. We're also working on how we can help people avoid or overcome the benefits cliffs that happen when they start to earn more money, and the lack of practical workforce experience. Many of our jobs call for a degree and X number of years of experience, or X number of years of experience, and you have great candidates that might not meet that requirement. So before you even get a chance to talk to them, they might be disqualified from those positions. So we're really having robust conversations around skills-based hiring. And, all of these solutions are really driven by public-private partnerships and led by the great work that our business partners are leading to ensure that we're building the programs that they want to hire out of. So a lot of great work happening here on this balance side. But the other piece of the equation, if we go to the next slide, is our students. So we graduate in Connecticut between our high school students, our CTech technical high school students, our CT State, and our higher ed programs, approximately 48,000 students that are entering the workforce. These are students that are graduating and staying in Connecticut. This is a population of highly talented students that may not have the practical work experience to fill your open jobs. And so we're working diligently on how we ensure that not only are their academic programs aligning to your needs, but that we can build out a robust work-based learning opportunities for all of our students across academic levels, so that they're getting the practical experience they need, and many times in your company, so that you are developing your next generation of talent. You get to know them as a student, and then hopefully have a place for them when they complete their academic education and their work-based learning experiences. So a lot of work is being done there, but there's a huge opportunity to enhance that connectivity between our students and our employers. And so we're working very closely with CSCU, CT State, and our other academic partners to build out career pathway programs and dual credit to expand work-based learning opportunities, emphasizing skills-based hiring. Another highlight that I want to share is the State Department of Ed with CT State and OWS and DOL. Did a marathon application for a national grant from the Department of Education to build out career pathway programs. We're keeping our fingers crossed that we will be awarded that grant, which is $1.4 million per year over 3 years, as a way for us to continue to build out these important career pathway programs. So thank you to our partners for that. Our next slide, please. And another program that we'd love to highlight for you today that really is the example of a best practice employer-led initiative connecting employers and academic partners together to ensure that we're building higher education programs that ensure that the students going through these programs have the knowledge, skills, and abilities that our employers are looking for. So we have some special guests here today to share some work around the Tech Talent Accelerator. It says 2.0 here because the first Tech Talent Accelerator 1.0 was a $1 million investment from the Department of Community and Economic Development, and the Tech Talent Fund was so successful that we went back and asked for another $1 million to enhance and scale the program. So I'd like to welcome the New England Board of Higher Education. I see Michael Thomas on our call today, the president. Thank you, Michael, for all of the work that you do to support Connecticut in this amazing initiative. And I'd like to take a moment to introduce Katie Singer. She is the Director of Policy and Research, and Laura Robert Rivera from the New England Board of Higher Education, along with their business partner, Jeff Ocker, our Associate Vice President and Head of Innovation and Delivery from Hartford Infosys. So thank you, team, and I'm going to leave it to you to share this amazing work.
Well, thanks, Dr. Valories. First of all, thanks for the opportunity to be here. We certainly want to thank and acknowledge Governor Lamont and your fellow members of the Workforce Council, as well as its chair, Mark Argosh. And we're appreciative of the opportunity to partner with you and with the Office of Workforce Strategy, and also with our program partner, the Business Higher Education Forum. As an instrument of the 6 New England states, NEBby's vision is that everyone in New England will have lifelong access to affordable, high-value post-secondary education credentials. And this can particularly occur through expanding connections between post-secondary education and high-demand talent needs. With the Tech Talent Accelerator entering its second phase, as you noticed, as you mentioned, 2.0, it's a pleasure to introduce my colleague, Katie, and she will share some details about the specific higher education and industry partnerships that the accelerator is supporting in the ongoing work of 2.0. Katie.
Thank you so much, Michael. Do you mind going to the next slide? Thank you so much. We are very excited to announce 12 recipients of the second phase of the Tech Talent Accelerator. The first phase was extremely successful, and on the slide that you have in front of you, those are the independent institutions that received funds to develop new pathways in the areas of cybersecurity, mobile app development, game design, analytics. Those 6 independent institutions have also received, as part of your investment, an additional $1 million investment. Will provide these current grantees an additional booster to scale their programs at Mitchell College, the University of Bridgeport, the University of Hartford, University of New Haven, the University of St. Joseph, and Quinnipiac University. And they are growing their programs and having students begin to graduate from those and receive certificates. And they also have been working very closely with their business partners, which you'll get a chance to hear from in a second, and developing those needed, as Kelly mentioned, those experience pieces, those opportunities to learn experientially with work that they need to be doing in the classroom, but then also once they enter the workforce. And so they're very innovative programs that they've been developing. Could you go to the next slide? Thank you. And through a competitive grant process, the additional $1 million is also funding 6 new awardees. They're both from public and independent institutions in Connecticut. We have Charter Oak State College, Southern Connecticut State College, the University of Connecticut on the Stanford campus, Fairfield University, Albertus Magnus College, and Connecticut College. And they are 2 focusing on building brand new pathways around cloud computing, cybersecurity, and that much needed, as was mentioned earlier by several of our speakers, the healthcare field. So focusing in bioinformatics and applying those to the different industry needs across your state of Connecticut, and general information technology support. And so each of these institutions have an industry champion and who are key in developing the curriculum and the needs, the skills that are needed once they graduate and begin in the workforce. And we have, because of the additional investment, we have over 23 Connecticut-based employers that are going to be partnering with these institutions to address the technical talent needs of the state of Connecticut. And if there are any businesses that are currently on this call, we are open. There's a community of practice that we engage with both the businesses as well as the institutions. So if you have any interests, please feel free to reach out if you want to get involved in the program in any way. But to hear a little bit more about the business engagement side, over the last year, I've had the honor to work with Jeff Auker, Infosys Associate Vice President and Head of Innovation Delivery, who is an industry champion for the University of Hartford. So I'll just pass it on to him to kind of give you a little bit about the business perspective.
Thanks, and apologies for the lack of video today, dealing with being a little under the weather. But this is a program that, hits all the buttons on what we're looking for from, a tech company looking to expand the pool of folks that we have and some of the more traditional approaches, and cyber is becoming one of them. So we can't do any of this stuff without the cyber there, as well as opening up pathways to some of the more advanced skills down the road. We've talked quite a bit about how, the basics of networking, data, software, hardware, you got to start somewhere. And we've really been, the University of Hartford has been reaching out to us and working with us on, what this mobile app and this mobile programming will look like, what the user experience can look like, how does it respond to business needs and customer needs we've identified. So it's a great back and forth. It's great to see the, newer folks coming in excited about all this stuff and, getting their perspective on all this. I'm always energized by hitting the college campus. So we will continue to support this as best we can, whatever we can do. Does that do the trick?
If you want to go to the next slide, this is a contact. So if there are any businesses, please feel free to put it in the chat, but you can always reach out to us at NEBI at policy@nebi.org if you have any questions or interested in getting involved. And that's all from us. Thank you so much, Kelly, for the opportunity to announce the awardees.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you so much to the team and to Jeff for all of your work here. Today I am in New York City. I will be working with the Business Higher Education Forum's annual meeting today, and they are also a big partner in the work that's being done here. And, I think for me, it's really exciting to see a translator between our business partners and our academic partners. Sometimes we don't speak the same language, and we need an interpreter to come in and really be very specific in how they talk to businesses to determine what those KSAs are. Here I go again with the acronyms, knowledge, skills, and ability. And then how do we turn that into curriculum? And a lot of times we have, our especially in technology, it changes so rapidly. It's so difficult to keep up with the rapid changing of technology. And this is an opportunity to build that bridge and that sustainable relationship between our academic partners and our industry partners to really ensure that we keep this discussion going, right? It can't be just, okay, we're going to do this project, and at the end of it, we're all going to go back to our corners and our curriculum is set. That's, maybe 15, 20 years ago, we could do that for a little bit, but we know how fast the iPhones change. So we have to keep up with the changing pace of technology. The other thing that we're really working hard is technology is just not in the tech sector. Technology is across every industry sector. So it's really exciting to see a healthcare bioinformatics, which is a brand new word I just learned. So thank you for increasing my vocabulary. To ensure that we're focusing across industry sectors. Manufacturing is another industry sector that needs cybersecurity at the highest level. Connecticut is home to 3 of our largest defense manufacturers. And in order to do any business in the defense manufacturing industry, you have to meet very stringent cybersecurity standards. So even the smallest businesses need to have expertise on cybersecurity. So thank you again for all the work that you're doing, and across industry sectors is very exciting to see. So the next thing I just wanted to share with you before we turn it over to the stars of our show, which are our panelists today, is we are convening the 2nd annual Workforce Summit. We have a date of April 16th. It will be at the AquaTurf. We heard a lot of feedback about the accessibility of the AquaTurf. Unfortunately, it is the only venue that we can find across the state that can meet the needs that we have. So this year, we're going to be working on an effort to ensure that anyone who has any barriers of transportation or anything else to be able to contact us, and we will provide opportunities to address those transportation and connectivity issues to make sure that this meeting is accessible to everyone. We've expanded our sponsorship in this meeting this year and our hosts. We want to make sure that we are sharing out to everyone else how connected and collaborative this effort is with Workforce. So again, our leading host is CBIA, and we're working also with the Department of Administrative Services, the Department of Economic and Community Development, Department of Labor, State Department of Education, the Governor's Workforce Council, CT State, Ready CT, and of course, SVP Connecticut, and thanks to Mark and his leadership here. We're also going to be starting a hopefully annual awards event. So this will be Governor Lamont's inaugural Workforce Partnership Awards. So more to come on that as we work out the details of how you can nominate those best practices in workforce partnerships across the state. So we want to make sure that we're modeling the appropriate opportunities to collaborate broadly across stakeholder groups. So please mark your calendar, and more to come. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Mark to introduce our panels.
Thank you, Kelly, for that excellent presentation. Now I have the distinct pleasure of introducing the panel discussion on childcare and early childhood education. We greatly appreciate having Commissioner Beth Bai from the Office of Early Childhood with us today. Beth has been leading the Blue Ribbon Panel over the past year, the Governor's Blue Ribbon Panel. We also have 2 GWC Council members who are also members of the Blue Ribbon Panel on our panel today. Sean Coyne, VP of Human Resources at General Dynamics Electric Boat, and Dr. Minette Ferguson, the Executive Director of the Alliance for Community Empowerment, which is one of the largest, if not the largest, childcare provider in Connecticut. I have the honor of moderating this amazing panel, so I'll ask a set of questions for panel members and try to leave some time at the end for questions for the group. If we don't get to all of your questions, we will be having breakout discussion groups around 4:15, and one of them will be on childcare, which Commissioner Bai will be able to stay for. So that we really appreciate that. So I'd like to start out with, first of all, getting each panelist's view regarding, what are the biggest challenges that we're facing today in childcare. Commissioner, it would be great if you can provide an overall perspective on the current state that we're in. And then Sean, if you can address the impact of childcare on the businesses. And Dr. Ferguson, if you can give us a better understanding of the challenges faced by early childhood education providers and families, that would be fantastic. Commissioner?
Oh, great. Thanks, Mark, and thanks for all your work and leadership on this issue. Really happy to be here and with Sean and Dr. Ferguson. Sean, I was with some of your people this morning from Electric Boat who came in with a lot of energy and excitement to solve some of these problems. And Dr. Ferguson works to solve them every single day in a very pragmatic way. So great to be with you all. Many of you know the large challenges that Connecticut parents face when they try to access childcare. If they can find a place that's high quality, it's expensive, and they work to afford it, but some families can't afford it. We have some of the highest childcare prices in the country. So, this is a national problem. We're really hoping that the federal government steps up and helps with this problem as well. But in the meantime, Governor Lamont has heard from enough of you all and businesses and from families to say, we really need help with childcare. And this is a really family-friendly state, and this is a barrier for families' economic success in Connecticut. Mark, I would say the biggest problem we face right now in the childcare field that the panel has been very clear about, as Sean and Monette have also heard in many public hearings, is the workforce issue that Kelly just talked about. And Kelly, when I was listening to you, I thought, under Governor Lamont's leadership, for the first time, Connecticut allows childcare subsidies to be used when parents who are not working are in higher ed or workforce training. And I just looked it up while you were talking, and the state spent more than $6 million last year on childcare for people in workforce development. We know that helps them access workforce development. But if we don't have our own workforce, then we can't help the other workforce. And classrooms, hundreds of classrooms across the state are closed because of a lack of staffing, really chronic underfunding, and hard to afford for families to pay the full cost. We had a great federal plan in the Build Back Better plan that would have brought Connecticut almost $300 million a year to help with childcare. That did not come. Governor Lamont did an amazing job looking at ways that we could help, both using the federal relief dollars and then avoiding a steep cliff in Connecticut. But this Blue Ribbon Panel plan is really needed to try to give Connecticut sort of a 5-year strategic plan to continue to both expand access for families, stabilize the industry, and make sure the professionals are paid appropriately, and to make sure that we're building that workforce of the future with high quality settings, because we know those early years really set the stage for both school and life success, as well as well-being and emotional health. Everything that people need for high quality workforce for you, and those of you who have businesses, they learned in kindergarten, right? They have good executive function, they can make a plan, they can ask questions, they can flex, they can adapt when the schedule changes, and they learn to work hard. So we know it's important now and for the future. So those are my opening comments. Many problems, but lots of great people at the table. And I'm so confident with this Blue Ribbon team that we're going to make significant generational progress for childcare in Connecticut.
Thank you, Commissioner. Sean, could you provide a little bit of a business lens on this?
Yeah, that's the commissioner. That's a tough act to follow. I appreciate everything the commissioner and the governor state has done working with EB. I think, Mark, in your question is implied the answer, which, yes, it does have an impact on business. I've been on enough of these calls now where we talk about the challenge, like where's the workforce, right? And so, I think, from our perspective, part of it is that part of the workforce, they're still here in Connecticut. They're still down here in Southeast Connecticut, but they've made a decision to stay home because it may not be available or it may not be affordable. So I think that's part of the workforce story. I also think about, here in our business, whether we're hiring trades or we're hiring engineers, we do look outside of the state. And when you're trying to pull talent in from outside the region, this is one of the top questions that is asked about. And so, obviously what the state is doing, trying to make us the family-friendly state, the #1 in the country, that'll help us all pull talent, bring people into the state, as opposed to like when you look at the census data and you see kind of like where key demographics are going, they're going out of the region. So again, that impacts all businesses, not just us. And then I guess the last thing I would say from an opening comment perspective is the workforce that is here. They have life challenges because of childcare, right? I think about myself, growing up, and both of my parents worked, and we relied upon childcare to take care of me and my sister. But sometimes that's not available. And when it's not, that, impacts businesses and getting work done and stuff like that. And so there's many layers to it. And I'll keep it at that to be as brief as possible.
Sean. Dr. Ferguson, can you give us a view from your closeness to what it's like to basically lead an large early childhood organization, and the families, obviously, that you serve every day?
Absolutely. First, I'd like to give a shout out to my staff who actually do the leading in this space. I can't begin to talk or think about what we do for families in this community without thanking my staff, because they're on the front lines and they're the ones that are extending nurturing experiences day in, day out. I think for us, a big issue, and the commissioner touched upon it, is a living wage. We can't attract talent to this space without being able to pay folks enough to feed their families. We know this industry is heavily weighted with women as not just caregivers, but leaders of their household. These are women of color. These are women of strength, women of skill, and women of knowledge that have nurtured nations over time. So we really, really need to think about, as we work through this plan with my peers and others, how do we uplift the next generation of caregivers as well as this current generation of caregivers? When I think about parents, I think the Blue Ribbon panel is doing a great job of listening. I think we're doing an unprecedented job of listening. There have been several listening sessions across the state. Parents, I know parents in my specific area, we were given an opportunity to do some listening sessions and some focus groups and surveys with some very, very keen, connected parents and families here in my neighborhoods. And what we heard from them is access and opportunity. They want access and opportunity, and not just access to any childcare program, but quality childcare that's going to help their children, help all of our children excel, learn, have great social emotional experiences, and really experience the wholeness of being a child. We know that poverty changes everything. We know that poverty has impact on access and opportunities. So we need to use that lens when we think about how we need to change the game for families as they're trying to access. We also understand that business owners are looking for folks to work. If we didn't learn anything from COVID, we knew that childcare was the foundation of employment across the entire world. So when that foundation crumbles, we understand that we have a lot of work to do, and we haven't quite been able to sustain and rebuild that foundation. So yeah, that's what we experience here. That's what I hear from my peers, and I'm learning a lot around other models across the country, and also learning to listen to see what will work here in Connecticut.
Thank you, Dr. Ferguson. Commissioner, can you just provide a little bit for everybody's, many people have maybe heard that there's this blue ribbon panel. And I know Dr. Ferguson just touched on the amount of listening that, occurred, but it kind of describe the process itself, what your expectations are in terms of, delivering a plan to the governor, and maybe even just talk about the goals of the plan.
Sure. Thank you, Mark. The governor asked us for a 5-year actionable strategic plan, and I want to recognize that Fran Rabinowitz from the panel is also on this call. So you or Dr. Monette or Sean can feel free to add in if I miss anything. But what we're trying to do is what we did was initially, way back in April, we brought in some national experts, and then we created 4 work groups. They came up with initial recommendations. I wish you could see how different those are than where we are now, but some very initial recommendations around affordability, access, workforce, quality, and also what's the fiscal plan. And then after each topic, we held public hearings. And then after those public hearings, we adapted the plan, went on to the next topic over the course of about 4 months. After that, we tried to put together an outline that would be very transparent and let the field, let families, let the public see what came out of those first both panel meetings on topics and public hearings on topics. And then we had a real plan out there. So once we had an outline out, then we had between 20 and 30 public hearings. I would say it leans closer to 30 across the state on Zoom, to small groups, to families, to business interests. Mark, you and CBI hosted 2 business sessions. So we wanted to really get a 360. We know that this has meaning and that the priorities are different for different groups. So now we're to the phase where that outline has been updated again and sits on the OEC website. I can put that in the chat after I finish speaking. And so where we've landed is, we have some pillars. That is like, these are the core items that are important. We need equity, quality, affordable access, system stability, and community voice, and parent, provider, and community voice. That in Connecticut, we really want community-based decision-making, and we really want to have the data in communities and improve our data systems so that as we fund the system, it adapts as community change, and that stakeholders in that community have a real process. So that came out as well. So we landed on 4 goals. 1, we have to invest in the workforce and recruitment to make sure that our children have the best possible early childhood educators in front of them, and that those people, mostly women, are fairly compensated. 2nd is there's equitable and affordable access. Just as an example of what we mean by equity, often we think of race and income and that kind of thing. That's part of equity. But Sean talked about a real inequity in our state. Eastern Connecticut, their childcare desert is so qualitatively different than the rest of the state that even if you could afford it, even if you get a grant from the Office of Early Childhood as a parent to afford childcare, the providers don't exist. There's a real desert because of the population trends out there. So there's inequity based on childcare deserts. There's inequity based on families' ability to pay. And we also identified from families real inequity and access to early childhood programming that meets family needs for children with special needs. That for 3 and 4-year-olds particularly, not something we came in thinking, but a real problem. We also have clunky systems, poor data systems, not the greatest information systems for families. We have really helpful 211 childcare info line. We found out about 25% of families even know that exists. So we're recommending something where we just have parent ambassadors around the state in our communities who know their communities, who help parents navigate. Because parents told us, this is how we find out about information. You may be paying for a 211, which is helpful. But we find out other ways. So we really tried to listen to what families said about how they learned, and we're recommending sort of parent ambassadors on the ground. And then we need a fully funded system to make this happen. And I've talked earlier about this requires a federal approach. Right now we have a state approach, but we need the state, we need communities, we need business, we need the federal government. We know parents right now are paying a disproportionate amount of the cost and more than they can afford, often more than their mortgage, which really holds families down. So that's a process, Mark, and those are the basic goals. I think the last thing I'll say is other states who've made progress, and the panel is sort of keeps coming back to us with this, is what's a sustainable funding stream? How can we dedicate dollars to early childhood? This is an infrastructure investment, just like roads. We don't hesitate to build roads, bridges. They cost billions of dollars to help people get to work, to help them get where they need to get. And we just haven't looked at childcare in that way, but this process has really showed us that childcare helps Connecticut run. And Governor Lamont really, that became very clear to him during the pandemic, and he started referring to childcare providers as first responders, as so critical to the state's functioning through that difficult time. And that's why we have this panel. So I'll stop there.
That's so helpful to just lay it all out like that. Dr. Ferguson, maybe you could talk about, in terms of some of the workforce side recommendations and needs that you're seeing, come out of the Blue Ribbon panel.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I definitely thank you, Commissioner, for giving us that oversight. When we think about what we see here on the ground is that livable wage. When we think about, how we get folks to stay in this field, how we attract folks and recruit folks to this field, we need to be able to pay them enough to feed their families and to live their best lives, whatever that looks like for any individual. We know how important early childhood is as a learning phase, from pregnant moms all the way to, college or high school. And we know that there's a trajectory here that we could take advantage of. I think one of the things we talk about a lot with Blue Ribbon as it affects staff is what does that trajectory look like, and what does that system look like, and how can we honor years of service in the field, and how can we honor folks that are dedicated and can't afford to get a 2 or 4 year degree? How do we turn that experience and that skill and that nurturing knowledge into dollars and cents for our workforce? And then also, how do we attract high school students or grade school students, or what does that workforce development plan look like from community to community? It's so necessary to attract folks to this industry at a time where they're interested, at a time when they're keenly involved in child development. And then what does that look like from community to community? So I'm just really interested in uplifting the current staffing patterns that we have now, and also thinking about future. And also, Commissioner talked about systems. The systems that we use here in Connecticut are broken. And broken is probably the best way I can put it.
It's very polite of you.
Thank you. But when we think about things that are broken, I mean, we know there's always the optimism of them being fixed, right? So we look to other states, we look to other countries, we look for models that work. We think about the low-hanging fruit, things that we can grab immediately and fix without a lot of effort, because it's pretty second nature and very organic to get those things fixed, and for the good of all, as we build the next iteration of what works for families and for staff.
That's great, Dr. Ferguson. Thank you for mentioning also that there are some things that are low cost or no cost that can also be like, one of the things that struck me in the recommendations is the fact that programs are paid by government in arrears. And so that we're asking small businesses that are underwater or barely scraping by to be the funders rather than the state paying, before the service is kind of delivered. But I want to turn to Sean. The commissioner talked about Eastern Connecticut as a bit of a childcare desert. And you're leading human resources for the largest, or one of the two largest manufacturing companies in the state. And people can't, there are a lot of your workers who can't work remote. They have to be on the job. So what do you see as some of the key needs that people are facing from an affordability and access standpoint in working with others to kind of, help to create solutions?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of the similar messaging that you've been hearing. There are some really great daycare options down here. Not enough of them. I think there's that. I also think, when you think of electric boat, you probably think of Groton in Connecticut, but the reality is our workforce is dispersed throughout a large circle around that region. And so I always think about kind of the regional dispersion of, not just in the epicenters of Groton and New London, but all the surrounding towns, or, because you want something that's convenient for families. So there's that piece to it. Maybe it's a little bit more unique to us, but, we in Groton, it's a shipyard. And so most of the workforce is here at 6:30 in the morning. So, having an option where they're able to do drop off very early in the morning is a big one for us. And we operate on 3 shifts. So, second and third shifts support options are something that we focus on. Affordability, like we've heard from everybody today. For the EB employees, they're fortunate enough to have an average wage that, it's a good, strong average wage. They're not able to probably qualify for any state help, but it still is a large part of their income, particularly if they're a sole earner of a family. So that is also something that, we're very keenly focused on right now.
Thank you. And thank you for mentioning that, because, we oftentimes forget about the fact that people who are working still also need support, because they're part of this kind of population that's kind of gets caught in the middle. I mean, childcare can cost $25,000 a year. And even if you're earning, a salary of, $75,000, $80,000, that is a very large percentage of income. So one of the recommendations I know with the Blue Ribbon Panel is to, over time, really try to raise the kind of income qualification level, the eligibility level for the Care for Kids program, to be able to reach more people who this is, really a challenge. Maybe just close off, Commissioner. I know that, we're talking about a 5-year plan here. Could you talk about the 2 phases of it? Like, how do we actually get real about kind of making all this happen?
Well, I think you're sort of 2 phases. First, we have to stabilize. So the federal stabilization funding is ending. Well, it ended September 30th, and the last of our payments went out to help programs stabilize. We've just had our first meeting with the program on the brink of closure now, because as those funds run out, they have to maintain the increases in wages that they have given. And that is, just not possible without raising tuition, and parents can't pay more tuition. So we recommend a period of stabilization continuing. And this was not in the original plan, but after meeting with the field, it was clear that those grants really help them stay open. And so this would help 70% of programs with ongoing stabilization. Also, what you talked about, Mark, part of stabilization is changing our relationship with our vendors, paying them upfront, paying them directly. And then I think all of you will appreciate this. To go to a state-funded program, it's 5 days a week, 10 hours a day. Well, parents are flexing now, and some on 3 days a week or 2 days a week. So if we pay by classroom, that allows providers to offer flexibility to parents. So they could have a 3-day a week matched up with a 2-day a week. And so looking at other things like that we can do to help stabilize providers. So stabilization is first, and then getting ready for the system building, getting our data systems in place so that as we look to expand access and improve higher ed, that our higher ed access to higher ed, that there are systems in place that make that easier for both providers and families. So the first phase is definitely system building, making sure we stabilize that workforce, improve their wages through these grants. And then over time, as we build the system and increase access and increase affordability and improve the rates, then the stabilization grants go down as the rates go up and programs can sustain. So those are sort of the two phases. First is system building and stabilization, that is being ready. It's going to take us time to get ready for a scale up. And also we can't lose programs, particularly in childcare deserts and high need areas, while we're gearing up. So we've got to provide some temporary funding that will go down over the 5 years while we build up the access and the rates and simplify our system. So expanding what families can access care. So those are the two phases.
Commissioner, what an exciting plan. Thank you so much for your leadership here. And thank you to Dr. Ferguson and Sean and the other members of the Blue Ribbon panel who are here for your leadership. This is not, as Commissioner Bai said, this was not just show up a couple of times.
It's a lot of homework.
This was an intensive process. So thank you for your leadership.
Thank you.
With that, I'm going to kind of say, in terms of questions from the broader group, I invite you to participate in the breakout sessions at 4:15, and one of them will be on childcare. Commissioner Bai will be leading, and we can, get into the details on any questions that you have. So I want to thank the panel, and now I have the pleasure of introducing our second panel for the day, and introducing Anthony Barrett, who is the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer for the Office of Workforce Strategy. And Anthony has just been an amazing leader, and he's been leading all of the work for the Governor's Workforce Council, working with all the different subcommittees representing different populations. So Anthony, first of all, thank you for your incredible leadership. And I want to turn it over to you to lead, to introduce the members of this panel.
All right, thank you, Mark, and good afternoon, everyone. First, I'd like to pass over to our panelists to do about a 30-second self-introduction, and then we'll dive right into some conversation around supporting individuals with disability. Turn over. So let's go with President Mudugo.
Yeah, good afternoon. Can everyone hear me? Okay, great. First and foremost, I believe it's Monday, so happy, it's not Monday, it's Thursday. Happy Thursday, everyone. John Maduka, president of Connecticut State Community College. Really happy to be here. I'm serving my 17th month as the inaugural president of CT State. We recently merged, so Connecticut State Community College, we are the largest community college in the Northeastern United States and tri-state area. We're the largest college in Connecticut. We serve about 25% of all undergraduate students in the state of Connecticut, and really happy to be in this space. And then personally, my wife and I, we're proud autism parents. So our 3 children, 13, 11, and 5 are on autism spectrum. So we're definitely advocates in this space, and obviously happy to share my lived experience as an educator and a parent as well. So happy to be here, and thank you.
All right, next, go to Commissioner Porter.
Good afternoon. Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here with all of you today, and a pleasure to be celebrating National Disability Employment Awareness Month. So thank you for hosting this panel and for inviting us to participate.
Thank you. Commissioner Sheff.
Hi, I'm Jordan Sheff. I'm the Commissioner at the Department of Developmental Services, and have been working to help people with intellectual disability get real jobs for real pay for a long time, and hoping through your support and further education, we're going to make better headway than we have traditionally. Despite our successes, there's always lots of room for improvement.
All right, and last but not least, Meredith Shea, President CEO of INCORD.
Hi, Meredith Shea, President CEO of INCORD. We're a safety netting manufacturer located in Colchester, Connecticut. We have about 120 employees, and since we've been in business since 1995, we've had a long history of working with AVP and other organizations to support employment of individuals with intellectual disabilities.
Right, perfect. So we're here to celebrate National Disability Employment Awareness Month. So I want to extend a warm welcome as we mark this commencement for our discussion around National Disability Employment Awareness Month. Today, as we gather to underscore the profound significance of promoting diversity within our labor force and fostering an environment where every individual, regardless of their ability, can flourish. Throughout this month, we've recognized and celebrated the exceptional contributions of individuals with disabilities in our public and private sector, while also addressing the persistent challenge that they encounter. Together, let's reaffirm our commitment to dismantling barriers and advancing policies that ensure an equitable and accessible workforce. So with that said, I'd like to have the first question. I know ADS has been doing some phenomenal work and some recent grant opportunities around career pathways and so forth. So first question I would like to put over to Commissioner Porter is, how do you see the role of vocational rehabilitation and training programs evolving to better serve individuals with disabilities and entering and succeeding in the workforce? I notice a mouthful.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you so much. And again, thanks for having us here today. So definitely the landscape is evolving. I've been in the field of vocational rehabilitation for a long time and have seen it evolve. And I think, we've always focused on the individual themselves. What are the needs and interests of the individual, and how can we make sure that there's a fit with the job that's there? But so holding on to that hallmark, I think we've also transitioned to a place where, particularly with the Governor's Workforce Council and our federal laws that guide us, we've been able to do more of a statewide policy perspective, really looking at how can we create inclusive policy, how can we create inclusive programming, because there's this tendency to create separate pipelines for individuals with disabilities, or a separate program, like let's do this over here. And I think we've had this great opportunity with this council in particular to have the conversations, to be heard in that space where we're really looking at how can we just design things to be more inclusive. And I think for me, that's the evolution of both voc rehab and the training programs that we see, is that move to more of a systems level thinking, where the individual's needs are still met, the business needs are still met, but we do so in an inclusive way.
Okay. All right, thank you. And then thank you. So Commissioner Sheff, piggybacking off the landscape around inclusive hiring, what do you consider are the primary barriers for employers in hiring and integrating employees with disabilities, and how can these be overcome? Oh, you're muted.
I think there are a lot of myths around or assumptions around what it means to employ someone with intellectual disability, and I think that is the largest barrier. I don't think most employers or many employers understand the incredible value hiring someone with disability brings to your workforce, and increasing your diversity, often increasing your morale. Very high rates of reliability for attendance and performance comes with often with technical support from one of our private provider agencies or from Bureau of Rehab Services, one of Amy's divisions, Commissioner Porter's divisions. So I think, and typically once we can get in the door, we can have a snowball effect and the employer gets it. I think they think they're doing charitable work instead of understanding that they're making a really good business decision. Hiring with people with disabilities is good business, and it's good for business.
All right, thank you. And speaking about business, I would like to make this next question for Meredith, who I had the pleasure of talking with, and she has a phenomenal program supporting this population for several years. Meredith, can you highlight some strategies that have been effective and retained and promoting employees with disabilities within your organization or in a particular industry?
One of our oldest employees, period, is a gentleman that started with us when he was 18. He was living or about to transition to Bryan House, which is adult vocational program in Chester. And they have been phenomenal partners for the past 25 years. And we've worked with other individuals as well. But I think having that partnership where the three of us are working as a team to promote that individual's meaningful work and success at the company. And, they're completely right. it's a benefit to the company, and what he adds, it's not a burden whatsoever to the company to have this individual here who knows his job. If he struggles, he needs a job coach, just like any other employee may when they're progressing in the company or learning new skills. But I think having that really solid communication with, with a group like that and a plan to move forward has made it a very successful relationship with the individual as well. So if they transition to a different job or, a different skill set, we're still committed to helping them learn essential job skills. And if this is the right company for them and they stay, we still have that support network to keep them engaged and enjoying the work as well, and the communication open. But I would say it's an absolute pleasure working with all of the individuals we have currently employed and, previously have employed for everyone at the company.
Okay, thank you. And I'll come back to you right after I pose this question to President Maduko. How can education institutions better prepare students with disabilities for the transition to the workforce and ensure they have the necessary skills support to succeed?
Yeah, great question. I think for starters, institutions of higher education have to be public, private, 2-year, 4-year, post-grad. Our missions are for the most part similar in terms of, really striving for academic excellence, for the betterment of student success. And that's applicable to all students. So for starters, our institutions cannot create a second type of or second tier environment for students with disabilities or neurodivergent individuals, right? We have to apply an equity lens towards everyone. I think too, it's really harmful to predetermine, because you have a disability, we're going to put you in this box in terms of the types of careers we think are more suitable for you. As a parent of children with autism, I would be livid if an institution told my child that. So why as a college would we do that to anybody? I think that's really important. And then 3, it's not really complicated. As a college president, what we do at CT State and what I've done in previous institutions, the step 1 is really asking the student, so what is it that you want to do for a career? Right? Like that's step 1, engaging with the student, right? With all students, especially those with disabilities, because they will express to you what their interests are in. And then you reverse engineer it in terms of, all right, let's create a pathway to that. So I feel that there are seamless and applicable pathways in workforce that we're working on. And I think the fact that we're talking about this right now, Kelly Valieris and myself, we talk almost weekly, about opportunities for all residents of Connecticut, right? But we have to go beyond awareness and really be advocates of acceptance, right, of people with disabilities as it relates to their potential and their careers.
All right, thank you. Well said. So I had the pleasure of meeting with Meredith, and she shared some partnerships that she had with a local, I believe it was a local high school that was kind of like where she was sourcing and developing the talent. So Meredith, can you discuss the impact of mentorship programs for employees with disabilities and how organizations might structure such initiatives for maximum effectiveness?
So it was a bit grassroots, but we reached out directly to I think it was East Haddam High School, who had a couple students who were transitioning out of high school, and the students and their parents weren't sure what the next step was for the student. And, so they said they want to try out manufacturing. And we said, great, let's work on this together. And so I think that the partnership of the student, a manager at the company, along with a teacher and a program that really cares, creates a really nice support network for these individuals, because they're figuring out, like everyone else, transportation and timeliness, and if they enjoy the work or not, or if it makes sense to them or not, and if they like the community around them. And what we found has been really successful is involving not only the manager, but also the coworkers of the individual to understand, okay, these are the person's strengths, and here might be, where they might need additional support to complete the same job everyone else is. And that's been helpful for everyone. And I think especially for these individuals, the pride that they carry, that they're being judged on the same work as everyone else and can be extremely successful with it. It creates a complete team for our company. So it's really, it works well, but everybody has to be involved, kind of like a 360 support network there.
Great, thank you. And Commissioner Porter, what are some of the common misconceptions that exist about hiring people with disabilities, and how can businesses more effectively challenge these stereotypes?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you heard Commissioner Sheff starting to touch on some of those. Really, so there are a lot of misconceptions. So I went to try to do a little research, see what kind of came up the most. Indeed.com lists 3. They list disability means lack of ability is one of the misperceptions. And what can a business do about that? Focus on the skills of the candidate and what abilities they bring to the table, just like you do with any candidate who's applying for a job. A second one actually relates to something I just saw pop up in the chat. It's about accommodations, and people are really worried that accommodations might be very expensive. And typically they're low cost, no cost. Department of Labor has a group called the Job Accommodation Network, and the Job Accommodation Network says that 58% of accommodations cost absolutely nothing. And then the rest typically cost under $500. So is there some cost? Sometimes there is. But a lot of the misperceptions is that it's going to be expensive. It's always going to be expensive. And then I think, so what can you do about that? Obviously just the awareness about what the costs really are. But also thinking about our workplaces and how they've evolved over time. Accommodations are so individualized, right? They're based on what an employee needs. And so many of them are cross-cutting and they work for everybody. So things like telework, things like flexible work schedules, things like stand desks. I don't know how many of you have one, or how many of you stood at your counter through COVID. So things that are really, really available to everybody, but trying to understand from the individual's perspective what those needs are, having that conversation. And you can access the resources I talked about from the Job Accommodation Network if there are questions as well. And then the third misperception that they had on there is that from an employer's perspective, that your job posting templates are inclusive. Sometimes they are, and sometimes there's some wording in there that you might want to just look at through a different lens. Really look objectively, try to think about, like we just talked about with stand desks. Maybe your posting says that you have to have the ability to sit for extended periods of time. Well, do you still, depending on the job, what does that look like? So really evaluating kind of where you are now. We're in a whole new environment in so many of our workplaces. So just challenging some of that, translating that to your interviews too, making sure that you're thinking about the language there. So those are some of the things I have.
Thank you. I love the list. And now I'm going to quarterback this over to Commissioner Sheff and stay on the track around engagement with employers. How can employers address invisible disabilities and create a supportive environment that recognizes and accommodates all forms of disability? You're muted.
I have a dog that whines in the background, so I keep muting myself so you don't have to hear him. We have an employer in Connecticut with a model program in some ways, our Walgreens warehouse up near the airport. Somewhere in the neighborhood of 50% of their employees have some sort of disability. And they make all sorts of accommodations, but they don't change their expectations. They have to perform like any other person would. They have to have they're strict on their measurements. There's a number of pieces they have to pull in a certain period, or boxes they need, all of that warehouse work. But they also have done some things for all employees that really benefit also our employees with disabilities. So smart technology that's in the workplace that really facilitates the ability to use heavy machinery and equipment to pull and pick warehouse goods and load them. If you haven't been there and you want an idea, if you like to show how things work, go to the Walgreens plant and the warehouse there and take a look. It really is something. I think that you likely have encountered people with disabilities in workplaces and you didn't know, because as you said, Anthony, a lot of those disabilities are invisible, and if someone's doing their job and doing it well, you'd never know that they might have a disability. And then there's a matter of acceptance. I remember when first meeting or greeting people when I moved to Connecticut who were individuals with disabilities working at my local Stop and Shop. While the first time you're there, you might make that observation, you continue to go through that register, you go through that line, you meet the people, you get to know them, you know their names, you know their stories, you know their celebrations, you know their successes, and you know their hardships. And it's the same way you would be inclusive of anyone else. Who we all bring difference to the workplace, right? We're all different people. Their differences sometimes create some challenges, sometimes create some real strengths and opportunities. And the more we do that work and celebrate that work, I think the easier that is to not see the disability and to not see people by their disability, but rather by what they contribute to the workforce.
Well said. And thank you for those comments too as well. So this next question I'd like to pass over to President Meduco, which stays on the line with employers and partnerships. What partnerships or collaborations can be formed between educational institutions and businesses to create more employment opportunities for graduates with disability?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we currently engage with many of our employers and industry partners across the state and across various sectors. And it comes down to skills, right? It comes down to the skills that the employer or the company or industry is seeking, and how as the institution can embed or update our curriculum and our teachings to apply or ensure that, those skill sets, those competencies are being taught, right? And it's no different for individuals with disabilities. But on our end, it comes down to what is the manner by which individuals can actually gain those skills, because regardless of your level of ability, we all learn differently, right? So just on this call today, I've seen people make comments about the audio. People are muting themselves. I'm sure the screen can be, limiting for some individuals. So there has to be that empathy of adaptability to the end user. So as a college, it's to the student. As the employer, it's to a prospective employee. And then there's that delta in the middle, right? So it's really the collaboration, right? It's our advisory board panels. It's if this is a key skill set for this specific role, give us time to kind of figure out strategies to kind of embed that in our teaching and training. And then also let's include students with disabilities, right, in those meetings, in those engagements, so they can speak to, I really want to work for your company, but here are some of the barriers that are in the way that makes it difficult even to apply or even to maybe visit and shadow a currently employed professional in a role. And I think it's just constant engagement, right, to strip down those barriers, but also to boost confidence, to say that you are seen as an individual, you are seen as a person with potential, you are worthy the minute we engage with you, and allow us to meet you where you are. I think the more we do that, I think the more apt people are going to be willing to work together, especially as it relates to individuals with disabilities.
All right, I'd like to stay on that topic and probably just close out one more question with you too is, when you speak to the user experience for our end users, in your opinion, how has the rise of online and remote learning impacted students with disabilities, and what practices should educational institutions adopt to ensure accessibility and inclusivity in new paradigm? So as the world changes and things are adapting, how do we support this population?
I'm not sure who you're pointing that to, but I'll take a first stab at it.
I was actually sure, but I was also actually pushing that right back to President Meduco. being that he's at an educational institution, but feel free to jump in.
No, jump in. Go ahead. We're family. Go ahead.
We are family. I will tell you that there's an explosion of assistive technology that we use to help support people in the workplace and in their homes. A lot of it originally geared, and Commissioner Porter has a lot of insight into this area, but a lot of that technology originally deployed to assist aging Americans to age in place and to be as independent as they can be. The individuals we support are not afraid of technology or innovation. And in fact, some of their skill sets are so great with that technology. We have one gentleman who was placed, I believe it's at the UConn Medical, whose skills were so adept, he was able to pick up stuff looking at the computer work that he was asked to do that a lot of their technicians were missing. And they've elevated him within the organization because his attention to that detail may be a function of his disability or just may be an innate specific skill set that he has, but he adds value, and technology is his friend and is becoming the friend of a lot of those we support in the workplace. We do have a number of individuals who also don't love large settings, crowded settings, who really excel by being able to contribute without necessarily needing to be in the workplace to do it, and can really contribute even in a remote work world. Many of our folks are more hands-on and need to be in the workplace and want to be in the workplace, but it isn't necessarily for everybody. 17,000 people eligible for the department and no two alike. So, we, as Commissioner Porter stated earlier, and as John mentioned, it's one person at a time identifying their strengths, their weaknesses, their limitations, and their assets, and then identifying an employer that's the right fit for them, with the right job for them, with or without the remote technology or other assistive technology.
All right, President Maduga, you want to take a shot, or I'll probably pose probably the last question. I know we have about 4 minutes left, but if you'd like to answer that question, I'll kick it right back to you, President.
Yeah, I'll add, career services or career advising is also a huge avenue to help students with disabilities kind of adapt to potential employment and careers. But also too, the mentorship and the confidence building in students with disabilities is this. Though the potential employer is interviewing you, you are also interviewing that employer, right? So as we are reviewing job profiles and company and organizational profiles, right, there's certain buzzwords, right, that speak to the sense of belonging that that employer has centered in their mission, right? So again, instilling that ability to look for those key details and indicators is really helpful. I think too is also our role to advocate for our students is to also update employers. So when an employer says, a firm handshake tells me whether or not an employee is going to be great at their job, I don't know what you're talking about, right? I know a lot of horrible people with firm handshakes. Let's get back to skills. Let's get back to potential. Let's get back to, even when you hire someone, it's the responsibility of the employer to invest in the employee, to develop their skills as the industry changes, right? So it's that two-way street, right? There's a power and station that as an institution of higher education, we are instilling in our students. And as long as we do that, we're happy to advocate for our students, but also happy to educate employers on how they need to adapt in this new world to really equitably serve everybody.
All right, thank you. And this is probably going to be the last question. I'll have everyone just have a chance just to answer this particular question. So based on some data that I read from the 2021 Census Bureau, Americans with disabilities tend to earn less than those who do not have a disability. Those with a disability earn a median income of $28,438 in 2021 compared to $40,948 among those without a disability. So the next question in regards to that, which I love for all the panelists just to answer and close us all out, is discuss the importance of disability representation in all employment levels, from entry-level positions to executive leadership, and how can it be improved? That's a tough one. So Meredith, I'll kick it off with you, Meredith.
I think, like John said, we are paying based on skills. And if people are able to accomplish a certain skill level, they're getting paid regardless of, what they're coming in as. That is our job as an employer, to make sure we're training for those skills and adapting, and it's our job to help individuals continue to advance in our organization. We really enjoy promoting from within and keeping people engaged and challenged, and that is regardless of if they have a disability or not. And the pay doesn't come as a factor for us, with these individuals. They are getting pay based on tenure and, skill level. And frequently, like is kind of in the meeting chats, they are the biggest cultural ambassadors, relationship managers, within the organization and with our, shipping companies and other companies. The skills that they add to the organization far, I wouldn't be a consideration for me, I guess you could say, to pay somebody less who's doing the same or, a kind of deeper job because of all the emotional intelligence and understanding they're bringing to it.
I think I'd only add that I have a great privilege of being advised in my body of work by 11 individuals who have intellectual disability, who work for the state, who work for me, self-advocate coordinators, and their motto is nothing about us without us. So we include them in a lot of what we do in terms of shaping policy and department direction. The other phrase that they remind me about all the time, that they advocate for, is real jobs for real pay. They're not looking for charity and handouts. They want to do real work. They want to get paid real wages. And so you talk about that disparity, and there are some in our population who may not mind or may not know that they're getting paid a different rate, but it shouldn't be that way. If they can produce and perform and contribute like everyone else in the workplace, they should be making the same money.
Yeah, and it's a great question. It's a sad reality that we deal with. So we've got a lot of great partners on the call today that I know are listening, and I see a bunch popping things into the chat that, people that are here to be supports and to help with that. But definitely that equity lens needs to be there, that people should be getting paid the same rate. We do face a little bit of a positive right now. The employment rate for people with disability actually inched up, which it's the highest it's been since they started tracking that back in 2008. So there's a long way to go. But I think one of the things that collectively as a state we're doing, and with a lot of our great staff and the partners that are on the phone today, is really trying to get into schools younger, trying to engage students, their families, trying to make sure those expectations are set high, and that Meredith, doesn't have to figure out how to set up a mentoring program, that those services are already there, that the independent living centers are connected, that our voc rehab counselors have created an environment where those things happen naturally. So I think the more that we can do that and back it up and get those expectations set early on, the better it is going to be for all of us in the state.
All right. I'd like to thank you all for a wonderful conversation, wonderful discussion. I know we'll have the abilities just to continue this conversation once we enter some of the breakout sessions. But I want to thank you again, Commissioner Porter, President Manduca, Commissioner Sheff, and Meredith for a wonderful conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anthony, and Mark, and all of our panelists for some really amazing discussions. I wish we had more time. But we actually are going to spend a little bit more time on 3 topics in our breakout sessions. So you have the opportunity to use the next half an hour or so to determine, what type of conversation you would like to engage in. So breakout session number 1 will be led by myself and Jeff Ocker, and we'll be talking about skills alignment and how do we ensure that we are providing the skills necessary for those who may not have been, receiving all of the privileges of the job trainings and opportunities within their communities and have been left on the sideline, and how do we get them back into the workforce to address our shortages, making sure that we have equitable opportunity for everybody, all of our residents. The second breakout will be led by Beth Bai, Commissioner Bai, and another deeper dive on the childcare. And so if you were really engaged and want to learn more about the work of the Blue Ribbon Commission, that's a great place for you to spend the next half an hour. And then finally, continuing this amazing discussion that was led by Anthony on persons with disabilities, and he'll be joined by Robin Sharp of Easter Seals to engage in more great conversation. And I just want to share with you too that these aren't just conversations for the sake of conversations. When you provide, your participation in these, we take this information back and we incorporate it into the work that we do. So we loved all of the great comments that happen in the chat, and we look forward to seeing you all in one of these breakout discussions so that we can continue to inform the work of the council and how we work in cross collaboration with all of our amazing partners. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Laura to give us a little bit of instruction on the breakout sessions.
All right, everyone, we're going to open up the breakout sessions as soon as I can find where they went. Over here, I'm going to go ahead and open up all the rooms. You sometimes a little green box pops up and you can start to join the room of your choice. If you have any issues getting in, just hang on the line for just a quick minute and I'll go ahead and give you a little nudge into the room of your dreams. So give everybody a couple minutes to start going in, and then I'll just start calling on you on where to go.
Some nice familiar names here.
A lot of familiar faces.
Yeah. Sharon, thanks for all your comments there too.
Thank you, Amy. You did an outstanding job. Thank you.
Thanks.
Let's see if anyone else keeps coming in. See the number going up a little bit. Thank you both. Thank you both for a wonderful conversation and discussion too. All right, so we're gonna have a co-facilitator. I'm trying to see if I see
I'm here.
Robin. Oh,
Here.
there you
Yep.
go.
Here.
I'm trying to find people sometimes when you're on these.
I know, in these little squares.
Yeah, okay. So so the way it's gonna go, we're gonna piggyback on some of the highlights of what we'd like to continue just to dive into. Like what was some of the most surprising, what was most surprising in the panel discussion? What are some things that we'd like to be able to dive into? But I think the second part that I would personally love to have some conversation around is around neurodivergence and social stereotypes. But I think we can, whichever, I want this to be more organic so we can have a more organic conversation. But if everyone's in favor of having some conversations around neurodivergency, I would love that. But I'll start off with that one because I think that would be a great just to ask. And I'll drop the question in the chat so everyone can have it. All right. So overall, the question that I personally want to have some strategic conversation around are what are the strengths and strategies for supporting neurodivergent employees? Because you had touched on it a little bit earlier, I believe, Commissioner Sheff, around people do learn different, and people have you call them superpowers. They can be geniuses, hidden geniuses. If we were to judge people based on their capabilities because they acted different or they learned different, we probably would have labeled Einstein crazy. And
I
Einstein.
think a lot of people did.
Yeah. You're like,
It was very eccentric. I only have a few minutes before I need to bounce, but my professional life is about intellectual disability. But if I can, just to share a little bit, my daughter has a neurological disorder, and there was no onset until her senior year of high school. And my wife and I, despite she's a social worker, and I've been in the disability field for longer than I'd like to admit, we were really concerned about what it would mean for her. And college was tough for her, in despite a very supportive program. Her first job, what she loves doing is working with kids, and she worked as a behavior tech at an agency that does that. And they really struggled to figure out how to make that work for her, despite her advocating for herself. And after about 3 or 4 months, despite the fact that it had lots of benefits based on the proximity to our house and the rest of that, she left and found another employer. They have worked really hard to include her and to make it accessible for her. And they actually have an in-house accessibility team, a surprising number of people who need some level of accommodation for a small, relatively small agency. And they set up bi-weekly meetings with her from the start. Once they learned she had that disability, and they've really made it work. And so she has some accommodations that they include. She has a slightly different attendance policy than other employees, because when she has these episodes, seizure activity and other issues, she has to miss a day. She has a number of health appointments because she's constantly seeing different clinicians. They were very accepting. Now she works for a place that is supports the autism and other neurodivergent populations, so they're well suited to understand her needs, and to work with her on those. And I'd hold them up as a model employer for that. And she has learned since she's been there that a couple other people there are also neurodivergent, but working with kids who with autism, and it really works. And I think in part because she has some empathy she brings to the work she does, knowing the challenges these kids face, even though she didn't face them herself until she was a young adult. So I would love to continue this conversation on neurodivergence and some of the amazing things I've seen, but I do have to get to my council meeting. I'll tell one brief anecdote in terms of those neurodivergent skills. I ran a day program in Rhode Island, and we had a sub-minimum wage certificate. We had a number of folks who, in addition to their intellectual disability, also were on the spectrum for autism. And we tried to convince an employer he'd be better off paying minimum wage than piece rate. And he wouldn't have it. He couldn't imagine this. They were kick pressing soap for a very large soap manufacturer that distributes boutique type soaps, and they imprint that the brand with a little kick press. When he started that job, this young man with autism, he ended up earning about $55 an hour, and this is almost 20 years ago, because his production, his ability to do a repetitive task, I lasted 5 minutes before I needed a break of doing that, and we would have to convince him it was time to quit, and he would that his piece rate was so high. So there are certain jobs out there for some of the folks on the spectrum that are ideal for employers if they understood the value that it would bring that other people would really struggle with. So I think when we start to sort of see the world through the eyes of someone who is neurodivergent and the strengths that they can bring to the workplace, you can really find fantastic opportunities both for the employee and the employer.
Mm-hmm. So this is Kathy Szilard. I'm the president and CEO at Stanford Health. And, one would think, given the variety of different jobs and positions and tasks that need to be performed in a hospital, that we would be an ideal setting to be able to provide opportunities for individuals with disabilities and specifically neurodivergent disabilities. And we have had, unfortunately, a very poor track record of success historically with this. And we began to think about what can we do differently that is often we would find that individuals would fail out of the job or would have some sort of an emotional breakdown in the middle of the workday that would create, a feeling on the part of whoever the leader was in the department, whether it was materials management or some other area, like, I don't want to work with this individual. No one is going to stay. The other workers are not going to put the time in. So we have a project we've been working on now that I think is going to be illuminating both for us and for the individuals we hired. We're working with ableists in our community, and we just brought on 3 people who have a variety of different types of disabilities, some physical, but mostly neurodivergent. And the way we're approaching this is a little bit different. And I'm not going to remember exactly, I apologize, how this is funded. There may be a grant, but we're providing some financial support as well. And the difference is that this is a training program. I believe it's 9 months in length. And Sal Mancino, who's on this task force but isn't here today, is the one who's leading it. And there are 2 major differences, I think, in the way we're approaching this program that I think it's going to make it successful. First of all, we had a lot of education with the department leaders who are going to be bringing these individuals into the departments on what is required of them in order to be able to make this successful. The second is we created a space in the organization where if there is a period of time during a day, there is an opportunity for breaks, for rest, for being able to step away from the rigor of remember, they're still in training now. They haven't gotten to the job. It's only a couple of months in. And that has created, I think, a safe place for this program to be successful. But I think the biggest piece of it that is going to make it successful is that Ableist is providing a coach on site for the individuals so that during the day, someone is making sure that they're keeping track of the training, the needs, flexibility, whatever we need to do to pivot a little bit so that we can make it successful. And so far, we've had rave reviews from the department leaders who were involved. One of the individuals was working in the operating room the other day, has very strong IT capabilities, and is fascinated by the idea of the operating room schedule. And there's a place in the operating room where it's kind of the eye of the operating room where everyone's watching the coming and goings of the patients and the surgeons and the staff, and it's called the fishbowl. And this individual has a real talent for being able to work in that area. But I have to say the coaching and the safe space and the training program and a commitment from both organizations, Ableist and Stanford Health, to make this work. It's just a very different way of us looking at this. And, I'm very optimistic about it.
Yeah, Alan was pointing out at the Project Search, which is a great model, very successful throughout parts of the state. Great partnership, right, between a nonprofit provider, an employer, and state funding. So it's great private-public partnership model that you're talking about, and it is very successful.
We have found a disability in Connecticut. We work with people with disabilities who are on different kinds of people with disabilities. We represent the employer in all of this, and we teach the employer best practices for doing that. As a result, we've come up on our own with some really great, innovative, highly successful, innovative programs which have gone around our employer base. One of them we'll be talking about on the 26th at a meeting we have, and it was the Travelers. And when the Travelers, who's been a longtime member and supporter of our organization, came to us, and they said, we have a lot of IT openings, and we'd like to hire people on the autism spectrum, but they'll never pass the regular interview. So, we looked at the interview process with them and told them what they would have to do to change it. And we did do that. And we changed it for everybody because they were interviewing everyone at the Travelers the same way, whether you're working in IT or you were a salesperson. That interview looked for the same skills, which was like crazy. I would have done great, but I'd be a terrible IT person. I'm a salesperson by trade. So it was just crazy. So we looked at that and they were very happy to accept the feedback we gave them. And it has been now, I guess, about 5 years. It has been very, very successful. They're partnering with the University of Connecticut, with college graduates on the autism spectrum. Judy Riley right now from UConn is the person who's in charge of that program. It has been incredibly successful. So there are all different levels of, when you say people with disabilities, you're talking about a wide variety of people. I happen to have a disability. I use a wheelchair. I have a neurological disability. I have a master's degree for education, a Juris Doctor degree, like a lot of other people, only I don't walk very well. I mean, so you're talking about a very large range of people. We have found that people on the spectrum, depending on what kind of job you want to fill, are outstanding employees. They're brilliant. I was talking I'll just tell a quick story. The Travelers brought some students in for students with disabilities, students from UConn in for, kind of a talk with some of the department heads about being hired for the summer. They have summer internship programs. And part of that interview was giving them a problem to solve. So the head of the department gives them this problem they could not solve at all. Nobody in the department could solve it. Figuring this would be kind of a ha-ha, this is funny. They go out for lunch, come back, and this girl pipes up and says, I know the answer to that problem. And they look at her like, okay, nobody else, yeah, that's interesting. And she gave them the answer. It really was the answer to their problem. So this department head pulls Jim McMahon aside and says, I want her hired now. And he said, no, we can't hire her now. She's only a sophomore. We've got to wait 2 years. Well, he said, well, make sure that she comes back every summer and we don't let her go to anybody else. And they did that. The funny part is I was doing an awards ceremony at one of our meetings, and another one of our partners, Sikorsky, had a similar program we helped them with. And I told that story and he goes, yeah, I know that lady, that woman. I said, what do you mean I know that woman? Well, in Sikorsky, we were doing the same thing. And he repeated the same story. I said, I wasn't talking about Sikorsky. I was talking about the Travelers. So everybody just started laughing because, so obviously these things do happen. So there are all kinds of programs out there. My advice to employers is look at what your needs are. Don't worry about hiring people with disabilities. What do you need? And then find the people with disabilities to fill those jobs. And those are the most successful disability hiring initiatives. And I think probably Amy will agree with you. Will agree with me on that because, I think that really is the way to go.
A huge untapped workforce, right?
Yeah.
I'm wondering about something that was talked about in the panel a little bit about creating inclusive environments. Because if our environments are truly inclusive, then things like that, like creating that quiet, calming space that people can access, I'm sure all hospital employees would appreciate that, right? Not just the people that are neurodivergent. So if we can create these inclusive environments, then they benefit everyone. And it kind of helps to really level that playing field. And I love the example of the height adjustable desks, right? Originally, made for people in wheelchairs, we all use them. Now we all use voice to text now, which was an adaptive technology, so this does work. These, adaptive things become very mainstream and benefit everyone. Are there best practices or things that people, have adopted in their work environments like that?
Yeah, there's a lot of talk right now about allyship as part of creating an inclusive environment. I was asked, I'm doing a keynote on allyship for a large financial service company. That is a really big thing. I'm so happy to see that. Because allyship is for everyone, not just people with disabilities. How do you welcome a new person into a department? What do you as a coworker can do? And best practices for that are the same for anybody. And it's just taking what you normally would do, almost like welcoming somebody in your home and adding a couple of things to it. So I think I'm very happy to see that coming, that allyship idea coming around. That will make a big difference.
Robin, could I ask a question? It's John Elliott.
Please.
So I'm interested in the question, when we have a group of young people who are disabled, and that word is sort of a hard word because it could range from being wheelchair bound or blind or not of hearing to neurodiverse. I mean, it's just a huge spectrum. And they want to come to a company to apply for work. What is the nature of the communication between the candidate and the company? And how does it become known that they are, quote, disabled, whatever it may be? And obviously, in some cases, it's visible. In some cases, it's not. And what accommodations are expected? I just don't know how that market works.
Can I bring something up?
Please.
I am disabled too. I have a vision impairment and a hearing impairment. And that's a giant question. As a person looking for a job with a disability, when do you disclose? At what point within the process do you step up and you tell the employer? Some people say it's right off the bat. Some people say when you go right off the bat, you might be you might be excluded right away. So there's a lot of positives. There's still a lot of fear and uncertainty by employers, whether they want to accept the responsibility in their mind of integrating their work staff with again, the spectrum of disabled people, whether it's typical and just not being able to see, or typical and just not being able to walk, or being atypical, neurodivergent. I think it's a societal problem. I think that there's a whole lot of work that still needs to be done to create inclusive spaces where everything is accessible to everybody from the time you get there. And I think once all of that is solved, the idea of going to work, everybody can work. Everybody can work. Everybody needs a purpose, a reason to wake up, a reason to go somewhere, and then a reason to be tired and go to sleep at night. So thank you for listening.
So if I may, I'll just continue for one more moment, Alan, because I think you said a lot of important things there. And as I listen to this group talk about employment for disabled, I use that phrase reluctantly, but individuals, one of the things I hear consistently from the people who are speaking out is the extraordinary positive outcomes that often come with the employment of people who have extraordinary ability of one kind or another. And if you put the right ability in the right setting, good things happen for the employer and the employee. So we just got to find a way to make it all more fluid, I think.
Yeah, this is Amy. John, it's a great question, and Alan gave some good examples of, it is a debate, and we have people that we work with that ask that question, should I disclose? When do I disclose? It's really a very individualized answer. There are some folks that they're going to disclose no matter what. They're going to go in there and make a very clear statement about their disability. There are some who do that because the employer has advertised as being a welcoming employer. There are other folks who are not going to disclose until they need an accommodation, and that might be in the interview or it might be upon hire. So it's a very individualized, nuanced answer to that, because it's really going to depend on the needs of the person, the particular business, the feelings that the person brings to that discussion about disclosure. And so, yeah, no easy answer. We can't give you like here's a best practice on that. It's the individual is going to kind of drive that, as they should, because it's, we all get to disclose what we want to in an interview. Some of us disclose way too much personal information that has nothing to do with the job. So it's kind of sifting through all of that.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
I'm trying to say something also about that, because I think that's really difficult. And I've noticed a lot of people, as they're going for interviews, really are concerned about that. And I have had my experience with that myself when I first acquired my disability. My advice to you as an attorney and as somebody who works with the disability community and a person with disability is, if you need an accommodation, disclose. If you do not need an accommodation, then do not. And what do I mean by that? Is that accommodation going to make a difference between whether or not you can do the job you're interviewing for?
Mm-hmm.
If it has nothing to do with the job you're interviewing for, don't worry about it. But if you need an accommodation that will affect your job performance, make sure that you disclose. Otherwise, if you do not perform your job well, and it's due to the lack of an accommodation, you have no recourse. Mm-hmm. Employers are not, they don't have crystal balls. They're not mind readers. It's very important to disclose if you need an accommodation. Other than that, I would leave it up to you. But I will share with you a funny story, because I went for a job interview when I first acquired my disability. I was going to go back into outside sales with a company. Met the company people for my interview at a hotel in Massachusetts during a horrific rainstorm. I mean, it was like drenching rain. And I had my first electric scooter. It was raining so hard, I didn't want to take my scooter out of the car. So I walked into the interview with a cane. So I'm sitting in the restaurant, and you can't even know that I have a cane because it fell on the floor. You can't see it. I was just waiting for the interviewer. And so I said to the person, being very brave and feeling very proud of myself for doing this, I use an electric scooter. I'll be using an electric scooter to go around and visit our customers. And he goes, no problem. That's fine. I drive a Ducati, no problem. which is a fancy Italian motorcycle. So he had no idea what I was talking about. I didn't start laughing because he would think I was going to laugh at him. But I kind of let it go. And as it ended up, I didn't really need to disclose because I was on my own. I was on the road, but I got the job. But I had no idea I would ever get an answer like that. So obviously he didn't know what a scooter for someone with a disability was. He thought it was a little, Italian motor scooter. So anyway. So much for disclosing.
There you go.
Just one addition. This is Amy again. One addition is, we all know there's visible disabilities and hidden disabilities. So there are some folks who don't have the decision about whether to disclose or not, because just going to the interview, although again, now in our new world, there are times when you going to an interview, you might, just by virtue of going, right? It's a little more obvious, but in the virtual world, maybe it isn't, depending on what the disability is. So again, it's individualized based on that as well. And what what the work environment looks like and what the individual's interests are in that.
I apologize. I have to run, but great conversation. Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And it is up to the individual to disclose, John.
No, I
figured
that. I just didn't know what the prevailing
wisdom was. Legally, it is up to the individual has to request an accommodation.
Right.
Yeah, legally, that's very much the case.
Yeah.
Hey, hi, everyone. This is Dave Dokas. I'm with BRS and Aging and Disability Services. I just wanted to kind of build off of Amy's response and say, specific to the accommodation itself, it's really up to the individual to determine what equals a reasonable accommodation. People with identical disabilities in different environments can need different things to be successful. So, although disclosure is a very tricky business, it could be even trickier about the accommodation itself, but listening to the individual and what their needs are and what their perceived needs are is a very important factor in that.
Absolutely.
Well
We
said.
have less than 2 minutes left. I just got the little,
I was-
where did you see that too? Is there anything?
I was
that
just
you-
going to
Yep.
add one thing, and I'm sorry, Robin, I didn't mean to talk over you,
No,
but
go right ahead.
I'm Jessica Cornell. I also work for BRS. And someone brought up, I don't know if it was John or someone else brought up sort of young adults and the transition aged. And part of what's really important with that age group is to help them figure out what they may need as an accommodation, if they may need one, so that they can explain it and advocate for themselves and be comfortable talking about that. Because if you don't have any work, no, so that's an important piece of adults we work with in that transition phase as they're heading to work.
Absolutely.
Any work experience?
I think, Jessica, I think we lost the last
Oh, okay, wow.
last second of what you said, but
Yeah,
helping
she has-
young adults.
Yeah, she was saying some great stuff too.
Yeah,
we-
I have,
Left, so let's just celebrate the fact that we had a good session. I thought this was very.
That's great.
I'm sorry, did I cut out at the end?
You did, but I think I got it about the importance of helping young adults understand requesting accommodations and
Everyone knew you were brilliant, Jess. It's
And what
okay.
they, oh, thanks, Amy. That's all I needed.
good.
We can finish on that note then. Thank you so
You're good.
much.
Hey, Robin, this is Shelley. I didn't sign in.
So I think now we're going to go to the report outs for from each of these sessions. And we're going to do pretty quick ones, like couple minute. I see Commissioner Bai. Do you want to kind of summarize what the discussion was in the childcare breakup?
Yeah, well, it was really helpful. We talked about some challenges that we hadn't touched on earlier, which are challenges around out of school time and how maybe, we need some better data about that. And Commissioner Russell Tucker offered some strategies and we'll take a closer look at that. We talked about childcare deserts. We talked about some of the challenges with zoning to opening family childcare homes and are there ways to remove some of those barriers? Also, the need for better data so more groups can sort of look at these challenges and provide insight and reports to us. We have very weak data systems at this time. Commissioner Russell Tucker, we want to improve ours the way you improved yours over the past few years. That was sort of a summary. I'm sure I missed some items, but it really was a conversation that was super helpful. Also, maybe on the facility side and in Eastern Connecticut, looking to leverage some existing resources in the state like LISC and CHIFA, and that's going to take a heavy lift to really adapt and fix some of those entrenched problems out there.
Great, thank you, Commissioner. Next for the skills panel, could we go to Jeff Walker? Jeff, can you do the summary, or is it going to be Kelly?
Oops. Sorry, I'm messing around with my my screen here. We upgraded our VPN and we now no longer allow Zoom, which is a problem, but hopefully it's fixed. Yeah, I mean the conversation was robust. I think it was starting to get into the details of what is needed, less so from the employee standpoint, because I think that's pretty well established. You're looking for that motivation, you're looking for the willingness to change when you're looking at upskilling and reskilling and reentering the workforce. But the focus quickly turned toward the training programs and the employers, and what can we do on either side to best unlock the potential of this part of the workforce, which is critical to to filling these jobs, as well as from an employer point of view, you know, the commitment, the enthusiasm, not just a check the box sort of effort, but people, you know, genuinely caring about what needs to be in place for accommodations, for reporting, for whatever else might be there to bring in, you know, these adults that are now changing their careers. And, you know, that brings a whole bunch of different challenges with family and, you know, assumed income there. So it was a good discussion there. If anyone wants to get into the specifics there, I know we got into some very specific programs that are being funded and what they're trying to do. But really I think the theme of it was kind of coming back on us as employers and educators and trainers to, you know, create the environment where these folks can, you know, learn and contribute. And hopefully I did that justice.
Thank you, Jeff. Next, let's turn to Anthony and Robin to talk about the panel with people with disabilities.
Sure. We spent quite a bit of time at great discussion, and thank you, Commissioner Porter and Commissioner Sheff for as long as he was able to stay. We talked quite a bit about accommodations and at what point a person discloses and how they do that. We just started to touch on helping young adults and how important it is to help young adults to understand those accommodations of their rights and how to advocate for themselves. We did spend quite a bit of time on neurodivergent employees and how to create inclusive environments and the things, everything from interview models and strategies to remove barriers and finding people's strengths to things like allyship programs and flexible attendance policies, how important it is to find the right match and to educate other staff and leaders, and some of the models like Project Search that are quite successful in partnerships and hiring people with disabilities. So that was really the gist of our conversation. I don't know, Anthony, if you want to, or anyone else wants to add anything else to that.
Right. Thank you so much. And thank you to our breakout leaders and to everybody who participated in it. I want to thank everybody for participating in today's meeting. I hope you found the meeting today informative and engaging. As always, we welcome feedback from you on how we can make these meetings even better. We look forward to seeing you at our next GWC meeting. February 22nd, it's going to be a virtual meeting. As you can see here, please save the dates on a couple of exciting meetings coming up, including our Regional Sector Partnership RSP convening on January 11th and our big workforce summit on April 16th. So again, thank you and have a great rest of the day.